So these vlogs should start getting shorter again now that we're down to only talking about 2 series. Not so much this one though, as I'm going to be talking a bit about Drive characterization as I saw it in the first episode. But first off, as tradition, we're talking about Toqger. Episode 31. I'm not sure how to put this exactly, but I think this might be a turning point on what I consider this series to be. I still think its beginning was terrible, but there seems to be a reason behind it if what was implied this episode is true, that they're trying to end up downplaying or upplaying, in that their idiocy is when they were strongest, that was when they were most imaginative and creative. You know my opinion with this series, in that they constantly screw up delusion and imagination, and if what's coming is what I think it is, then that's not a good thing. Anyways, they dock with the Hyper Russia Terminal, which is the Granddaddy Station, their upcoming final mech that's, of course, connected to the Hyper Russia, and it's the focal point for the Rainbow Line, the most important piece of it, that if it falls, the entire Rainbow Line crashes, or something like that. They really did not exactly state how relevant the Hyper Russia Terminal is. They just said, oh, it's important. If this falls, the Rainbow Line is ours, or something to that effect. They don't explain why. Or if they did, I missed it. They're there to get the Russia treated because, as established in a previous episode, specifically with the Diesel Russia, exposure to the Shadow Line damages, rusts, shuts down the trains. We saw that, I just said that, didn't I? We saw that with Diesel, in how it was rusted over and unworking, and that was done after it was lost due to the Shadow Line appearing. So, this is a bit of continuity. And of course, since they recovered them, they haven't really had time to tune up, but it was implied that the other rushes, due to their constant exposure to Shadow Kaijin, Shadow Line, Shadows of the World, that they're also beginning to rust, so they need to be cleaned, which is good logical reasoning. Then we get to the president of the Rainbow Line. Now, if you don't know about Japan, its rail lines are not government funded. They're all privatized, and there's actually a show about it on right now. I think it's something to the effect of Rail Wars. It's about a what-if society, a what-if world where the various metro lines that Japan depends upon were never privatized. So it's like a government-funded thing, and it's like, this is kind of off the point, but yes, it's run like a company, and thus there is a president of the company, which we usually know more as the CEO or something to that effect. And he is nightmare fuel. It's pretty much just a normal guy that wears a giant rabbit mask on his head that looks just horrifying. And is it arbitrary that the workers on the Rainbow Line have some ridiculous quirk? I mean, still, Ticket was the best part of the show, so I don't mind the puppet. I really do not mind the puppet. Seriously, best part of the show. And, of course, there's Wagon, who looks like a robot. Doesn't seem to act like a robot. And, of course, all her flirtations. And now we get to the president, and it's a guy wearing a rabbit's hat, a giant rabbit mask, And he acts like he's not wearing a giant rabbit mask. And what's weird here is that he wants the Toqger done away with because they're absorbing darkness as well. I mean, the problem with this is the Shadow Line is creating darkness by harvesting the negative emotions from humans. Humans are made up of positive and negative emotions. Positive emotions, light. Negative emotions, dark. We're balanced like that. Admittedly, our darkness can consume us if we become too negative, or, you know, a lot of crap in our lives happens and then we become life is nothing but pain, emo. But, you know, that's not exactly wrong, it's just different, and you can't stay that way, otherwise you kind of self-destruct. Now, I like wearing dark clothes. That's just what makes me comfortable. It's not really emo. That's not a tangent, take it, but yeah, it seems like something odd to say about the people who have the strongest lights in them that allow them to be really imaginative and fight off the Shadow Line, and maybe it's something to do with they don't want to and threaten them becoming creatures of darkness, which would make sense. But this show is terrible at exposition about this crap. Remember, there was like 3 or 4 episodes at the beginning of the series where we were obsessing with the almost dead thing. It'll probably get explained next episode, but it still irritates me that the president could not finish his sentence or his statement about this because we had to go elsewhere. Into a really frustrating and annoying battle with a pair of brothers, a pair of monster brothers. One is a chair and the other is a table. I am not even kidding. The guy one of the monsters has protrusions hanging off of his rear, so when he crouches, he acts like a table, complete with rear legs. And the other one can just put his hands on the ground while keeping his back parallel to it, and he looks like a table. And their thing is stick people in place while they're sitting down, flip the furniture! Yes, they are table flipping mad. I actually kind of got behind this as ridiculously hilarious. And then you see how they act. Yeah, they act like morons. Even Nero, who deployed them, agrees on this, that they're not really clever or malicious. They're just, okay, they are malicious, but, you know, not in the normal, take advantage of someone. They're just there for inflicting pain, and they're the most difficult challenge the Toqger seemed to have until they got clever and actually imaginative with the solution. Hide under a table that they set up. It's actually, what they used was called a kotetsu. It's one of those low sitting tables with a blanket around it. In old times, people would, people would have them so, you know, you would stay warm while you're sitting down and crouching, because they didn't really use chairs very often. They just, you know, sit cross-legged or a seiza, and that was how things were done for a long time. And I'm getting off track again. Anyways, 4 of them hide under it, and so when it's flipped up, they get the opportunity to destroy them. But that's, again, the B plot. The more important thing is the Shadow Line trying to get to and destroy the Hyper-Russia terminal, because then they will be able to conquer unimpeded. So pretty much all of the generals deployed to do that, including Schwartz, who wants to fight the Emperor in revenge for what happened to Greedo. Now, I thought going into this that Noah was going to do something, as in stab behind the back to get Greedo back, and that she would be helping Schwartz, but no. she knows that Greta's still in there and is still pretty much intact. So the question is, will killing the Emperor kill what's left of Greta, or will it free her? Or, if they just leave it alone, will she be able to reemerge undamaged from within Zet? Either way, when Schwartz senses Greta still in Zet, he stops himself from attacking Zet and backs off. But the other important part of this is Raito's not fooling around, which I think is a component piece of that. The Toqger should stop fighting the Shadow Line piece of the argument, because, how should I phrase this? Wright's an idiot, and him having the resolve, and not just the resolve, but the will and the vocabulary to be eloquent in saying why Zed's a bad person is normally beyond him. He's rather short-sighted, and this, as I said, plays into the whole president's statement thing, because he's saying the Toqger are no longer good to fight the Shadow Line because they're changing from who they are. Now, we haven't gotten to this yet, but the president is responsible for changing them from kids into late teenagers, adults, and wiping their memories so they could fight the Shadow Line. Yeah, we finally got confirmation they were kids, which is one of the most frustrating things, as now it, quote-unquote, justifies how idiotic they've been acting. I did the quote-unquote thing because it really, really does not. You'll wipe someone's memories, they're not going to have childish impulses, because they're not going to know how young they are. They're kind of, okay, I shouldn't say blank. There are some things that are ingrained, I guess, but, you know, I'm trying to phrase this correctly. I doubt an amnesiac adult would revert to acting like a kid if all they had was memories of when they were a kid, because maturity isn't just I'm arguing I am arguing against my own argument. How should I put this? Okay, we've known from day one that their memories were not entirely erased, so I guess they could have fallen back to the impulses they had most likely in their minds. I don't even know what I'm trying to say anymore. Point is that I still think it's a bad idea with how they've been acting. And to have that as the big reveal. They've been kids all along. We know this. Even before we got the timeline confirmation of when their town was destroyed, we kinda got that. Frustratingly so. Where was I going with this? This character development is apparently a bad thing for them, according to the president. And hopefully we will get the explanation next week of why that is, because character development is never a bad thing. Okay, unless it goes against who they are. That is the only type of bad character development, when it conflicts with their characters. There's an exception to every rule. You gotta know this. Drive. Okay, first of all, I watched the premiere live on one of the streaming groups. I should have waited for the subs, because there is a lot you miss when you don't speak the language fully. I have partial understanding, as previously stated, flawed understanding of Japanese, because it's partial. I should have waited because what I could capture in it was conflicting with what I wasn't, so as usual, I wasn't getting the full picture between that. So, what I finally did was, I watched it when the subs came up. Now, TV Nihon is not the only subs group for this, even though it's my preferred group, but Overtime is also subbing it. If you like liberal translation, which is when they change stuff to more flow with the translated language in sentence structure, not all the term changing, which drives me crazy. They do change some stuff, but it's not series terminology that they change, which is what was my big... I'm not getting back into this. What I'm saying is, Overtime is a really good group. They do translations fast. When they catch stuff, they almost immediately re-update the translation files. I highly recommend them. In fact, when I first watched O's, that was the group I kept doing, and O's is my favorite Kamen Rider series. And it was a constant battle between Gokaiger and... Yeah, it was a constant battle with Gokaiger whether Overtime or TV Nihon was doing the better translation at the time. I know a lot of people say TV Nihon sucks, but TV Nihon is not bad. They just have a lot of... not translation errors, but they don't proofread very well. At least they didn't. They do now. Really don't get the TV Nihon hates when there are a lot of worse translation groups. I'm not getting back into this. Yeah, we get a lot of exposition pieces out fast this episode to give character to our main protagonist, Shinosuke Tominari. I am probably screwing up that name. One moment. Yeah, it's Shinosuke Tomari. I want to say Tominari because .hack.gu. And, yeah, the series starts strong with a good view of the monsters, a good view of their powers, and some early character-defining backstory for our protagonist. It's like flashing back so it can flash forward. Now, we've seen this done before in Kamen Rider Double, in that it teases us at the events of the Begins Night movie, which would be shown in theater 16 months in, that would go back to that beginning case that happens before the series starts. And I don't think they're going to do it this time, because Shinosuke becomes the title character in this episode for the first time. Whereas when it was time skipped over before, Double had been active for a few months. So there's a differing factor. But there is a bunch of setup stuff done in that 6-month gap where there's likely some level of overlap. And we are probably going to be learning those events of what happened in that time gap, hopefully sometime soon. Because, you know, starts at this point and then jumps ahead to start the main show. That's not a bad thing. It gives... what am I trying to say? It gives a mystery of what the first day is, but lets us move forward to the show. And, you know, and gives the main character something to, not exactly angst over, but something to move past. What I'm getting at is, Shinosuke lost his partner in the global freeze, is the event they're calling it, when everybody suffered a... I think of it as a temporal distortion effect. The show calls it the slowdown or the density effect, where people's bodies become sluggish and non-responsive, but their mind is fully active. Now, I'm thinking that this is more a matter of perception, because... Okay, if you have really good reflexes, you can note something and move fast enough to, like, catch it. If your body can move faster than you can perceive things happening, then you're probably getting in trouble. So you probably punch walls, or not punch walls, it's like what happened to Kamen Rider Axel when he got his trial form. He had terrible control of it initially because he wasn't used to moving so fast. And he took a lot of damage initially from it until he got used to it. This is the opposite effect. Their perception of time is moving faster than their body can respond. It's like when you're playing a video game and you see that you need to guard against something, specifically in fighting games. You know, you've all experienced that, where if you were a second faster in pressing a button, you would have won. That's the kind of thing that's happening. Hey, you know you should be pressing it, but you can't react fast enough. And with the global slowdown, it's to the point where they're moving. It's like not just missed it. It's like their entire body is frozen and they can't feel help. They can't help moving. They can't move, but they're trying to move, so it's moving very slowly. And that's the effect of the monsters, the Romudo. And it's the first episode of the show. I'm going to screw up names, even though I have the Romudes. There's probably a reason for that name, but they're all monsters with numbers and creature themes, and the theme is cars, so of course they're partially based on cars or car technology. And so I'm seeing this as a parallel to the worms from Kamen Rider Kabuto. Now in Kabuto, he could press a button to clock up, which created not exactly a field, but everything encased in the armor and the armor itself were accelerated to a speed where the world around them seems to slow down or stop. And that was due to the worm's metabolic rates, giving them the ability to move and perceive things at extremely high velocities. I think. I've only read summaries, and this is the stuff that's stuck in my head. Now, the thing with the Romudos is they're not doing this to themselves. They're creating a field around themselves which either slows down the perception of time, speeds up the perception of time for everyone else, but not taking their body with it, so the slowdown effect happens, or they're actively slowing down physical movements of everything but themselves, but it doesn't affect cognitive functions. It's an either-or type of thing that really isn't well-defined yet. But they call it the density effect, or the slowdown in the show, because it feels like they're trying to move through extremely heavy, dense liquid, which is not a bad theory in that, just that there's not exactly pressure, it's your body trying to react to faster impulses, so it feels like it's not responding. And I'm probably putting words in people's mouths, but that's what I got out of it. And I'm not unawares of the effect. I think this has happened in a few cartoons concerning the Flash, where, maybe not the Flash, but somebody that got super speed and then was hit by something, so they only perceived things happening around them slowly, or could only react to it slowly, and it's like Red vs. Blue. Red vs. Blue Season 8. This was when the meta had all of the freelancer powers, and one of them was time manipulation. Now, Simmons and Doc, if I'm remembering the episode correctly, adjusted a plasma gun, which Doc used as a medical scanner, to shoot the meta, and it screwed up his time manipulation ability, so he was moving really slow, but was still building up all the momentum. It was just the time lock field was building that force, but not allowing it to be expressed properly within the range of the world. And it's like that, only inverted. It's not, the field isn't applying that to the monsters that are creating it, it's applying it to everything around them. Now, I really like the effects they have for this, because they have a person moving normally excluded from everything else, and then they have people, objects, the environment around them moving at this slow, distorted speed. It's a really great application of effects, which I'm wondering how they're creating. That they just like have the character move down normally and then do like an cutout overlay effect to when they did the rest of it. If so, that is very good quality work. I'm not even really discussing the episode yet, and anyways, Shinosuke, he lost his partner in the global freeze, and that obviously traumatized him. Yeah, we're starting with a traumatized protagonist again. This, incidentally, is written by Riku Sanjo, who's known for Kamen Rider Double, Kamen Rider... I think he did 4s, I'm not completely certain. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did 4s, and was also responsible for most of Kyoryuger. So... 2 hits and a partial miss with me. I liked 4s. It got boring in the middle, but I liked 4s. And I say traumatized again because he kind of comes off as Eiji Hino a bit in how he's kind of laid back and lazy, happy, but goes out of his way to help people, gets serious when he's helping people, and, you know, the person hurt in Blast of Fire, which damages and killed, and yeah, at least it wasn't a little girl this time. But he still feels responsible, as when the global freeze happened, it was right at a moment where had he reacted faster, had the freeze not happened, he might have been able to save him. It's questionable because we saw from the freeze that the criminal they were after had already fired a bullet into something that was flammable that set off an explosion and killed the guy, but yeah. There's actually an easy tell for when he gets serious and when he's being lazy. It's that he wears a tie, but normally it's loose, so when he's getting serious, he cinches it up. And that's a really good tell, but not one you might be able to catch if they didn't just frame it so properly in the story. And his handler for the show is a woman named Kiriko, who is part of his Special Crimes Investigation Unit, and she's also his partner concerning Trideron, the belts, and the drive powers, because I'll get to that. He transferred into this division because of his, I don't want to say survivor's guilt, but guilt nonetheless of the role he played in the man's death. And Special Investigations is, of course, Romuto. The monsters that I'm probably mispronouncing. I need to hear it a few more times before it'll click. The Special Investigations Unit operates out of a driver's school. Now, I got through watching Agito a month ago, and there's special unit cases in Agito and in Kuga, and I'm remembering from Double, we're a lot better funded than having to operate in the back room of a driving school. Kinda sets the feeling of the show right there if they're considered so unimportant, such a laughable decision division with such quirky ragtag members that it's pretty obvious that the police, not police, whoever's in charge does not think any of them. Aside from Kiriko, they're also completely oblivious to the drive thing, because reasons that I don't understand. I would think they would want to be informed and knowledgeable on this if they're going to be working together with him, specifically in this unit. In fact, he was assigned by the belt to this unit, and was specifically picked for the drive powers by the belt. Who drives the car? The belt is Kit, by the way. Night Industries 2000, voiced by... I'm forgetting the guy's name, because I haven't seen Knight Rider in a while. I loved Knight Rider as a kid. I want to like this show because I like Knight Rider. But yeah, there seems to be a lot of silly in setup that is kind of screwing with me. Like all the silly, quirky people who work there. A kind of lecherous, not exactly lecherous, but grabby scientist. A conspiracy theorist nerd that listens to every single thing that, not listens, believes every single thing that's posted on Tumblr, or the Japanese equivalent to Tumblr, or I think that's 2chan. Yeah, he gets his information from 2chan. I think it's supposed to be that he is a widespread information researcher, but it really did not come off that way. And, of course, an eccentric chief for the division who looks so damn familiar, I cannot place it. I swear he's been in something else. And, yeah, Shinosuke is a slacker because he doesn't know any of the information that's common knowledge around the office. That is really not a good way to introduce your protagonist. Then again, Japan seems to like its idiot protagonists. Why? I mean, you either have the savants, the total idiots that are somehow supposed to be charismatic, and the very rare crouching tiger hidden badass. I know there are a few more in there, but it's the big ones that keep coming up. It's like you're an idiot! So cool! Why are you only good at this good thing? One thing. Damn it. Ugh. It's why I like the kind individuals the most, because, well, not the kind individuals, it's the rare one of these types that keeps getting shown, in that you usually break in the nice ones. Yeah, you usually only use a kind protagonist if you're trying to break them. That's something I like. There's this whole thing about character archetypes, but the idiot one is my least favorite. I can pretty much stand or tolerate pretty much anybody else but the blatant idiot. Fortunately, Shinosuke's idiocy only seems to be happening because he's not motivated. He's still stuck with the bluzz, the guilt over killing his partner, and you get that. You can understand, you can empathize, so his characterization is probably not going to bug me because it's hopefully not going to be a consistently appearing thing with the show. Please, for the love of God, let it not be a consistently appearing thing with the show. But it allows them to have their more serious, more silly moments to contrast with their seriousness, which, after Gaim, I admit they really probably need. Okay, not just Gaim, Wizard and Gaim, because Wizard could get pretty damn depressing considering, you know, the show was about stopping monsters from driving people into despair. Admittedly, the elements that would drive people to despair could be pretty shallow, aside from Haruto's, who had a legitimate reason. I'm doing it again. So yeah, the show will probably be able to balance better the seriousness and the silliness, which is what makes some of the best shows. They know when to use what they want to. Specifically when the next Romuto case starts up, and Shinosuke shows himself as a competent detective when he's on task, when he's not. They describe it as being mentally stuck in the mud, so unable to move on, stuck on this thing, can't move past it, that the drive process helps him through. He can't be paralyzed with fear and doubt when someone is in danger, when someone needs your help. And that is what makes a Kamen Rider. The person that can put their own whims aside to help others, to save people when they really need it, at the cost of themselves. The whole self-sacrifice thing. Fuck Kamen Rider Tyson! Ugh! Anyways. Where was I? Right, the case is about people that get this red-pink colorization. I don't want to say fuchsia, but it's like, you ever see a person out of breath and how pink and red they can get? It's kind of like that colorization caused by the monster, which is a bat-themed one. Now, for those that don't get it, the first few monsters of a lot of Kamen Rider series have a recurring theme. A spider, a bat, and I'm blanking on the last one, but I believe it's some kind of lizard. That is because the first monsters of the franchise were the same ones. The first monster Takeshi Hongo, Kamen Rider Ichigo, fought was a spider. Yeah. So they often repeat this with a lot of Rider series. Black, for example, a recurring monster was the Bat Kaijin. Not Bat Mutant. And I believe the first one he fought was based on a spider. Beat was first based on a spider. So we're not that far off from the normal trend. The monsters can also appear human, but don't seem to be possessing humans. They just take on the... don't want to say characteristics, but it's like a disguise, which is another parallel to Kamen Rider Kabuto, because the worms in that series were shapeshifters that can take on anybody else's appearance down to their memories. So the case moves onwards. Shinosuke, from when he saw that Romuto come and attack them for no explained reason. Yeah, there's not exactly explained reason, but yet about what victims they were choosing, and tracks down another victim who is characteristically similar to the monster's human form. Now this might mean that there's a underlying connection to why they choose these forms. It's the first episode. We haven't got an explanation for that yet, and so has to face off against it. And this is where he gets most of the drive powers. He was forced to wear the belt because the belt is sentient. It's Kit. And this is actually, and showcases the actually several fights or scenes showcases the transformation trinkets of the series, the shift cars, which are micro machines or Hot Wheels. Congratulations, you've just created a new type of toy marketing. I cannot imagine how many... Actually, no, it's fusing into another toy line. I don't know if Japan has Hot Wheels, but damn, those were annoying to get as gifts. I got a lot of those. As a kid, I never liked a single one of them. It's probably why I won't be indulging in the merchandise stuff like I did the lock seeds last year. This and last year. Because it's just so... I don't want to say the theme is boring, the show uses them well, but, as a toy line, it's not something that appeals to me. Cars don't really appeal to me. It's just some place to get me faster than a bike or walking. I walk a lot. And this is ironic because Knight Rider was my favorite show growing up. Reruns of the show, at least. And, there's the Knight Rider theme for this show. So, yeah, the shift cars. They're all... I don't want to say AI-driven, but considering the belt can talk and is at least pseudo-sentient, it makes sense to have a virtual or basic intelligence in each of them, and they can form their own little platforms, which I thought was interesting as their battle assistant mech. They're the battle assist mechs of the series, while also being deeply tied into the transformation trinkets. Now, we've had gadget not exactly gadget users, but gadget intelligences. The first being shown in Hibiki, and then Kabuto again. And does Kiva count with the Kivat series? But the most prevalent use of it came with double O's, fours, and wizard. We didn't really have it with Gaim last year, which is odd considering the correctness, but then again, they had all the lock seed stuff to do with. And I guess it's streamlining the toy merchandising so they can sell more to the transformation trinkets while still getting that sideline device that acts like in the same respect. So, and they all have special abilities that allow them to fight the monsters, which is not something that wasn't often seen with the 3 or 4 series that, well, okay, they assisted in various circumstances, but it wasn't as prevalent as them actually being able to defeat the monsters on their own, which they can, apparently. Admittedly, probably as the series goes farther on, they'll get less and less effective at that. But it still reminded me of another thing Riku Sanju did, which was the second to last episode of Double, where Shotaro Hidari almost defeated the Utopia Dopant just using the memory gadgets, which were his components to the shift cars, and that was one of his crowning moments of awesome. So I'm wondering if at some point they're going to not exactly repeat it, but do something similar to that where it's just the shift cars attacking. So yeah, the belt explains that the drive powers and the shift cars allow them to ignore the density effect, the slowdown, the whatever it is. Why? I really wish we'll get an explanation to why sometime in the future. Hopefully something along the lines that the drive powers and the Ramuda were part of the same science experiment, because that would fit with Kamen Rider, with the general themes that keep carrying over, and it wouldn't surprise me if they are. And transforming into drive allows them to move even faster within these density effects than anyone else can possibly do to thwart them. And it's a really good transformation sequence in that the armor forms and solidifies, and then the Trideron shoots a wheel at him to make it like a wheel sash. I admit, I'm not fond of the missymmetry of powers. I don't mind it that much, but the sash actually looks good. It's a quirky design thing, but I think it works for his own level of uniqueness. I mean, the Go Andra, for example, had wheels around their... well, not around there, but close up to their elbows and close up to their knees, and those didn't spin. They did spin in RPM, but it was a design quirk that helps fit the theme. And this, I think, does it a bit better with how the tire changes, which are a subset of the form changes for this season, switch in different wheels, and then those can have different powers. Like, the base form is type speed, which is one card to activate the form, and then you have the other wheels, which create a subform. So it's speed heat, but it's still type speed form at the underside, so they can have more special equipment changes without the underlying suit changing, which is good. It allows for more variety while cutting down on costs. This time you only need to build the tire designs once, and when you get the actual form changes later in the series, those can still be recycled into the new stuff, which is good. And it still drives up production costs because this series has completely abandoned the arc storytelling that Gaim kind of started to break down, but it's going to be pretty much standalone, not standalone episodes, but more standalone episodes. Okay, I've gone on long enough again. Anything else? I like Trideron, but not as much as I should. It's based off of a race car, and so it's less like not the Knight Rider Pontiac Firebird. I think that's the right car that was used for the Night Industries 2000 in that show. It's not bad, but I'm just because it fits the same general design scheme. There's just something off about it. I think it's the left side. It's again a symmetry thing, but it's done like that. It's cut out the wheel casing. It's made so that it can launch the tires on that side. That's why they did it that way, but it just looks odd to have the wheel more exposed, especially since it launches off of it, and there's no real difference in the fender on that side. It's not shorter, it's just open. There's this giant open gash mark. What else? Right, the tire changes. The tire changes give special attack powers. There was a max heat, which creates fire attacks and projections of fire. There's Funky Spike, I think that was it, that created a giant wheel of spikes, and the car could turn into like a tack ball, you know, like a spiky ball. And something Shadow, which created energy shurikens, and in one of the preview images I saw it might be able to create a clone ability, which would give us clone ability back again. This is... How many series have had clone effects now? Decade, O's, Wizard, Drive. It's every other series now that's getting the clone effect. The Joker Strange Maximum Drive that creates clones of the right side of double doesn't count because that's a finishing move. This is a general battle example. The Rider Kick this time was weird. Now, Drive activates his abilities by because all the shift levers plug into an armlet slot, and they just interface with the driver separately because the toy works off RF chips. RF chips are pretty much does something with an electronic impulse that activates a sound function. But the point is that he does stuff with the lever to activate the abilities, and then he presses a button to activate the finishing move, and the finishing move is going to be problematic if it stays the way it is, because it requires the Trideron, and what if the Trideron isn't available when he's trying to rider kick someone? That's going to be an issue, because what it does is it creates energy projections of wheels around the monster to pin it while drive charges up, which is a good thing, and then the wheels spin like a car launcher. You know, if you ever played with Hot Wheels or other things as a kid, and you got this motorized tram thing which launches the cars around the track, it's pretty much the same thing. And so Drive jumps into the air, and the Trideron makes peeling laps around them, so he kicks the monster, bounces off Trideron, kicks the monster, bounces off Trideron, again and again and again until it explodes, and that rebounding thing just looked... It's awesome, but it's impractical. The reason I like Actual Trials Rider Kick is it's showing off the full speed of trial form with its... Each kick is a piece of the charge, so you're breaking down the defenses by pummeling them incessantly, so it won't matter, as once the maximum drive actually takes effect, you'll be hit with the charge all at once, all over again, to complete it. This is just reckless rebounding. It's still awesome, but it's going to get ridiculous, I think is... I can't even conceptualize why I don't like it, which frustrates me. There's just something unreal. That's not even describing it correctly either. I guess it's part of the reason is the way Trideron is moving it. It's like it's spinning so fast on two wheels. How are you doing this realistically? Yeah, it's AI controlled, so it can likely... I don't even know the reason. At the end of the episode, it's revealed that there are at least 3 generals. Now, we've gotten previews of them. Heart, Brain, and Masin Chaser. I'm forgetting the full names of the first 2. Masin Chaser is apparently an early on antagonist that has been called not unsimilar to Hakaider, in that it's a motorcycle-themed bad guy. Yeah, that's a weird one. With an odd mechanical form, and I still say his helmet looks a bit like G3 from Agito, but that's just because I've watched G3 recently, and there's something off about it. But it shows that whatever the Romudo are, these 3 have a stake in letting them onwards with their activities. Drive did not have a bad first episode. I think it's an underwhelming one, but it set up the show well. It gave us some things to question and some mysteries to find out about to keep us entertained. And that's ultimately part of what's good about a starting episode. It entertains us, it gives us something to question about the series to keep us involved, and it gives good characterization and background for everybody. I think that's what I usually hit when I say the opening thing is good. There are very few bad opening episodes that I have experienced for Kamen Rider. It's inconsistent, if I remember correctly, in how well they insert all of these things that's supposed to hook someone, but they usually get the rest of them by the second episode in the good series. So yeah, I'm looking I'm looking forward to more Drive. Maybe I can finally pin down some of the things that eluded me, and I think we'll discuss more of the Hyper Resheteo next time.